Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and we are working on the 34 Ford that is yet to be named. If you guys have an idea for a name relating to the car that's clever and helps us keep track of projects, drop it down below. But what we're doing is Pete and I went through the car last time and you guys saw that we got all the stuff out of the car. I worked on getting the front floor all cleaned out and just basically got an inventory of all the parts that we have. Next thing we want to do is try and get the engine freed up and try and get it cranking over in this video. So the car is kind of dead weight right now and the shop is full. So it'd be nice to get this thing to at least like start and run, that we could move it out of the shop and in if we need to move things around. So that's kind of like first on my agenda before we really do anything with the car, is get the engine freed up, get it to start and run. So we're gonna work on getting the plugs pulled out, get something sprayed in the cylinders to let them soak, and just look around and try to figure out what this engine is, and we'll see what we find. Coming out?
Yeah.
How do they look? You pull any out yet? Let's check them out.
Why don't you show the fans how they look?
Oh, you didn't show anybody?
No, I showed one.
They don't look too bad, actually.
They look like they weren't changed that long ago, before it was parked.
Looks brown around them.
Yeah, they're a little wet, too.
It could just be oil.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. They could have put something on the threads. Yeah, it don't look too bad. I don't know if you can actually see it. There you go. Not bad. Alright, keep going. Keep our vintage champions in our vintage engine. Alright, so we're going to try, because it's hard to get in, using this hose extension that's for Eastwood's internal frame coating, and because the nozzle isn't the right type of nozzle, and we're going to try and cut the hose and fit it inside of the little extension. Now it's a little big, but we're hoping that if we shove it all the way in there, it'll do its thing.
Keep it sitting above
Let's
gravity.
try, give me that can. Let's try and shoot down towards the ground. This may work, or this may be a complete utter failure. There we go. Put that on.
Yeah,
We should
I'll hold this end. You just
point it down. Ready? All right.
It's leaking at the top, but
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, because we can't get in there without.
masking tape.
Alright, trick number 2. We got some Gorilla Tape. Everyone needs some of that around the shop for stupid things like this. So we're going to try and tape half to our extension. Keep it on there.
I don't know who hired this tape guy, but
It's not very good. Little extension. This is gonna be just as bad as it was. Son of a that didn't work a freaking worth. Alright, so try number 3, if we think this one might work, is we got some Teflon tape, you know, you would use for threads when you're doing pipe fittings, and we wrapped it around the hose, made it kind of thicker so it was a press, sort of like a press fit or snug up top here. We're hoping that's a little better. At least it won't fly off now when we're putting it on. So I'll let Andrew do some insertion in the hole. And insert joke there.
Alright.
Like that light. Feel like it's in there pretty good.
Yeah, I'd say it's in a good 3 inches. So. Alright, as wide as the bore.
Alright.
I can see a good puddle.
Alright.
Looks pretty good.
Looks like it's. Hold this for 1 second. Let's get a shot. So show you guys, you got some in here. I know people use kerosene, they use tranny fluid, you know, automatic tranny fluid, all kinds of stuff, but this is what we have laying around for now. So we got it, there's a little bit you can see in there, it's kind of draining down, and we're kind of doing this so that we can get just some sort of lubrication in there to break up any little bit of rust that might be sitting in the bores when we first crank it over. So we got that one. We're gonna go through and put a little bit in each one, and we'll let it sit before we try and actually crank this thing over. But this is a first step, and then we can work on some other stuff. So we're gonna keep filling these cylinders, or at least saturating them with some Kroil, and that should take us a few minutes. Okay. So the next one. They had the engine painted gold. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that.
That's kind of cool. All right. So we were referencing in the last shot, you can actually see the engine had gold paint on it. I don't know if you can kind of see on the heads here, they had sprayed some gold paint. So the whole engine was painted gold at some point, which is kind of cool. You can see the Chevy orange underneath of it, but it was painted gold sometime in its life. And it's got these cool, I look for this kind of stuff when I build cars. It's got these cool little like accordion style spark plug boots, which are really neat. So, all right, go ahead, pull that one. Let's see if, all right, let's see. Oop, that's really bright. There we go. I really don't look that bad.
No?
They're a little oily, but I mean that's also a good sign that they're not dry. But looks like it's not like sooty black or, you know, super white like
Yeah,
it
it
was
looks
running
like
on.
clean.
Yeah, it looks like it was running all right.
That's what we like to see.
Go ahead. It's working pretty well. Keep going.
Yeah, I would say.
Looks like. What is that? Something in there. It almost looks like a bee or something, but how would that be?
Valves are open and they crawl through the exhaust.
Could be.
And it's like,
Maybe.
maybe that's all that's in there.
Kind of like. It's like a mealyworm type thing. See it?
That's a mealworm right there.
Yeah, that's like a little piece of. It's kind of what it looks like. It's like little dead mealyworms. I don't know if we can show
Every
that.
car has its own character. Oh, I can see it from here.
All right, so we're gonna check the oil next, see what it looks like. Got all the cylinders all filled. Actually, oil's not too bad. A little bit of gunk, gunk sludge on the bottom there. Let's check again.
Not too bad. A little black, but
Yeah, it's not too bad though. All right, so we're looking at the numbers on the block. The numbers on the back of the block according to the interwebs, again, I'm not knowledgeable whatsoever with small blocks, and the code that we're reading on the back of the small block apparently says that it was supposedly a Corvette engine, 195 horse, but the code that's stamped on the front pad of the block that gives you like the year of the engine, the plant that it was built at, it's telling us that it was built in the Towanda plant. It's a 1955 engine, which we kind of knew, but it has a letter at the end that is a letter F, which according to the interwebs, you all knowing, on this 55 website, it's telling me that that was a 265 170 horse, not the 195 horse with a power glide originally. So we're going to guess that that's the case, is that it's the 170 horse because it has a 2-barrel intake and doesn't have like power pack heads or anything on it. So nothing too surprising, but we don't know what's done inside. But I'm going to guess it was like a stock engine somebody threw in. But still cool to know that it is an early small block, so it's a good chance that this was done fairly early, maybe the late 50s, early 60s. Who knows? Maybe it was done in 56. We don't know. We just know that Larry bought it in 1970, and it was a done driving car, interior done. So we don't really know, but it's pretty cool to have an early small block. So we're gonna keep moving on, trying to clean stuff up around the engine and see if we can get this thing to crank over just with a battery if we're lucky, and then get the engine freed up. All right, so we're going to try and see if we can at least get this engine to turn over by hand or rocket free. Now this early small block, I think some of the later ones are a little different, but if you look through the grill here, there's no like bolt, like a crank pulley bolt that you can put a breaker bar on like we normally would do. There are 2 holes that you can put like dowels in and try and turn the engine. But what we're going to try first is just see if we can put this thing in gear and see if Andrew and I can rock the car and see if the crank pulley even starts to move, if we can even get any kind of movement out of it. If we get some movement, then we know that we're in the right direction here. So put this thing, put it in 3rd gear. Actually, I never even checked to see if the trans worked. Let's
Oh yeah, she's moving.
all right.
It's moving further each time.
Yeah, so we can keep working on rocking it. Well, we can work on the tires. Let me close this door before I smash it. We don't have latches yet, so
There's no latches?
we're still looking for those pieces that are lost in the abyss. Let's get this rocking.
That's almost a half a revolution.
There you go.
There's also Kroil spinning out of the plug holes.
That's good.
Yeah, so you know the pistons are coming up. Ooh. That's like...
All right.
It's progress.
I think we're ready to put some power to the battery and see if this thing will crank over. All right, so we're gonna get the oil drained and changed in this thing. I know it didn't look too bad on the dipstick, but I'd like to change it just to be safe. So get under here and see what kind of oil we get that comes out. Some light going. All right. All right. It loosens, that's a good sign. It's always the trick. Oh boy. Coming out a little slow there at first, but it's coming. All right, now we're gonna pull the oil pan, see what kind of treasures we find, or sludge in the bottom of the oil pan and the pickup tube. So, unfortunately, I got so many freaking cars in here right now, I can't really get this thing on the lift, so we're gonna do it the old-fashioned way. Keep it real or something. Take this out, see what we got. Alright, so I got the oil pan off. Step over here. And I'll turn it towards the light. Not horrible. Not nearly as bad as that Y block we took apart that was at 39. But still some stuff in there. Definitely a little bit of sludge in the bottom of there. So this is why anytime I got a car like this that's sitting a long time, barn fine, garage fine, whatever it is, and you want to try and make it run, it's best to pull the oil pan, as much as it may suck on some cars, to pull it and clean all this sludge out. So I'm going to let all this run down to the bottom and try and pour it out, and then I'll get some cleaner and get in there, some degreaser, and clean that all up. Underneath, grab my light here, handy dandy little Eastwood light I've been using. It's a great little spotlight where you can change the heads to all different stuff. But so what we got here, the oil screen. So this is what I'm talking about. You guys can see that oil screen is a mess. It's got just gunk and dried oil and crap caked on it. Who knows if this oil pan was even pulled since, like, 1955 when the engine was made. Knowing a car that's been built back in the 60s like this, they probably just grabbed a junkyard engine or whatever and threw it in and just went with it. So I didn't see any major metal or anything in the oil pan, or they came out when we were draining it, so that's good. So probably what I'll do is I'll end up pulling this oil pump down and cleaning it out as well, because that'll just give me some peace of mind. I'm gonna, fingers crossed, that the oil pump's good. Oil pan's not too hard to pull on these, so if we have an issue, we'll know it real quickly when we go to crank the engine up for the spin it over the starter bunch. We'll know pretty quickly if that oil pump's doing its thing or not. But good progress here. Okay, so wanted to show you guys, I got most of the oil drained out, but I'll show you guys why we do this. This is all around the drain pan, on the drain plug. I mean, that's not good stuff. So that's all that sludge that's in the bottom. Even though the thing was kept pretty clean, or kept indoors, the oil just sits there and sludges. So we've got literally like handfuls of sludge to dig out of there. So it's one of those things I oftentimes want to skip this step, and I almost did on this car because I'm so excited to get the thing to fire and run, but it would be such a bummer if the oil pan sludge blocked up the oil screen or oil galleys and had the engine get wrecked. Actually, on my Chevy, my 52 Chevy I have, even though I cleaned the oil pan on that one, it still happened on me. So you never know when these cars sit for real long. Sometimes that can happen. So got a lot of the sludge out. Feeling here. I'm sure there's some all the way in the back. So what I'm going to do is try and get the real caked on stuff off first, get that all drained out of here. And then what I'm gonna do is fill it up with like a degreaser, like some kind of mix of degreaser and kerosene or something like that, and let it sit in here for overnight. And that should break up most of the stuff that's kind of hidden, and just drain it out a handful of times, and we should be good. But we're at least I know it was good to stop and do this instead of just changing the oil and being done with it. So gross. Ugh. Alright, so I just got this stuff for free, so I'm not even sure if it's good, but it's Zep Fast 505 Industrial Cleaner and Degreaser. Honestly, it kind of smells like Dawn dish soap with like some extra chemicals added, but it was free, so what better use than to put it in our oil pan here. And I think it's for like degreasing like factory floors or shop floors or something. Probably got it at an auction for like $1 or free. So we will use a gallon of this to fill up the pan and let it sit. Might even put just a little bit more in to get it to kind of sit in the back section here, because we got a little bit of crud back there. But I think if I leave it sit with that and just put a little bit of elbow grease into it here and there, it'll probably be okay. I think that should be pretty good. That'll get it down into all these nooks and crannies that I couldn't quite get into to hit it. But I've been using a little Scotch-Brite pad with my gloves on, and I got a lot of the crud broke loose in the bottom here when we just off camera and drained it all out. So I'm going to let this sit for a while and soak overnight, and it should probably take a lot of this grease off, and the last little bit I can just hit with the scuff pad, and fingers crossed this should be all cleaned up overnight. Alright, so I got the oil pump off. Also, while we're letting the pan soak, decided to take the pump out, and I'll let you guys see. This is I'm really glad I did this, because the pump screen was super clogged. Like, you can barely, I think you can, maybe if I scrape some off, there's maybe kind of see the screen there, but the rest of it is caked up pretty good. So, and that stuff, you know, it'll break loose, but we don't want that floating around in the engine for sure. Oops, there's our rod. But yeah, so sounds like it'll create pressure. There you go. So I've had luck with these old pumps of just cleaning them up real good and flushing them out and putting them back on. It's nice to reuse some of this stuff if you can, but we'll know really quickly if it isn't good. But I've had really good luck with doing that, and I know people will complain and yell at me, you gotta get brand new, blah blah blah. But I've had good luck, so screw it. We're gonna be crazy. So I'm gonna put this pump in, see if we can soak it in our oil pan. Actually, we're gonna do a little parts washer action in here. Let it sit. And the degreaser bath we have going here, and hopefully that will help us a little bit as it sits overnight as well. What a mess. Alright, let this thing sit overnight, and I'm hoping that this degreaser did its job. And I let the oil pump sit in its little bath, which is cool. Oh wow. Dang. All the sludge is like just falling off of this thing, which is great. Yeah, pretty much like, looks like we can just spray it all off. That's nice. It's pretty much all, like I said, just falling out, which is what we want, obviously. So if there was anything stuck up in it, you know, it dissolved it so that it just kind of like washes off. Especially in these hidden areas you can't really get to. Looking pretty good. Happy about that. So get the oil pump cleaned off fully, and we'll dump the pan out and see what is left. Okay, so let's see if I can dump this out into my drain pan without soaking myself or everything around me. Man, just see all the sludge that softened up. It's just running down. All that stuff was floating around in there, and it was back underneath. I couldn't quite get to all of it, so now it's all nice and soft. You should be able to just like kind of rinse it out of there, and rinse / wipe it out of there. Some of it might just take some sacrificial shop rags to wipe it out of there, but we'll get it all cleaned up. Normally, if it was not winter time and cold as crap out, I'd get the power washer out and just power wash the crap out of it, but it is cold out and I'm not trying to get soaked and freeze my butt off. So you can see all that crud that's in the bottom there. It's all really loose now. You can see, I mean, it's just, you could take a rag and just wipe it all off. So that degreaser was saved me a lot of elbow grease. Get it? Degreaser, elbow grease. Alright. So I'm going to wash this out with some Eastwood chassis clean, and that'll get a lot of it off of here, and then the rest we'll just do with some rags and brushes and such. Actually, let's use pre because it's what's here. Alright, got some oil in it. Let's see if we can make this starter make any noise and turn over. Pretty much all the wiring was disconnected. Larry, when he was working on it last, he did label a lot of wiring, but he had pulled it all out in front of the dash. So all that stuff's disconnected, luckily. So I actually just pulled out. I'll grab it over here. It still had a battery sitting in it. Luckily, the battery terminals weren't connected, so the battery the terminals weren't all rotted out or anything. So battery's still just a 9.5 volt battery, which is kind of interesting. But pulled this out of there. We're going to use a different battery, obviously, but battery tray wasn't all rotted out, which is cool. But it uses one of those 6 volt size batteries, so. Try and get this hooked up. I'm going to try and use some jumper cables I have just to run to the starter and see if we can make the starter turn. And then we'll see if it does anything, and then we'll have to go from there as needed. So I've got to find a good ground. Here we go. Hook the battery up, and then we can try and jumper the starter and see if we can make it to do anything. I don't know how lucky we'll be. Find out. So I had a little plug that was like I knocked on the block that looked like it was epoxied in because I saw some water dripping. And yeah. This thing was filled with water still. That's not good because I am pretty positive that this car was not stored in a heated garage. And I guarantee since 1970, it's gotten colder than freezing in Pennsylvania, which could be very bad if we have a cracked block here. So, kind of weird. I saw some water dripping after I put the oil pan back on, and I couldn't figure out why. Look at this mess. Good God. And I was just about to use the starter. Damn it. So, I found a hole in the other side of the block. I was like, what the hell? And there was water like dripping from it. I thought maybe for me cleaning the oil pan. So then I was working on the other side, hooking the starter up, and I just like bumped something, you know, with my elbow, and this plug fell out. And it looks to me like they just like epoxied the freaking water plug. You know, the block drain was just like epoxied, and the epoxy was all like soft and gooey and whatever, and I just poked right through it, and that's when we just made that mess. So now I got a giant water mess to clean up. But I am very, very scared because water being in this thing over many, many years in a non-heated garage definitely is a recipe for a cracked block. So I'm gonna be freaking screwed if that happens. And you will see me have a want to buy ad for a small block, early small block. Damn it. Alright, so we're gonna just ignore this water for right now and try and continue this project slash video and maybe get a small victory. So I got my battery sitting down there, got it hooked up, got my oil pressure gauge. I'm gonna try and use the original starter button wire to jumper the starter, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully nothing burns to the ground or something. We will see. Okay. Nothing happened there. That's good. Oh, there we go. Let's make sure this thing's out of gear. In this episode of IronTrap Garage, Matt sends his new 34 Ford. Oh yeah, shit, that was in gear. Sends his new 34 Ford through the front of the garage. Okay. Try this again. That was a good sign. I'm gonna have to probably get some kind of better setup here. Yeah. Well, I can see we're shooting some more water out of the engine. Great. Alright, we're spinning over. That's good. And I smell my Aerokroil mixture coming out of spark plug holes. There we go. Got oil pressure. Good. Sweet, we got over 20 pounds of oil pressure. Good. It means our oil pump's doing a thing. Its thing. Sweet. Awesome. Well, that's great. Sweet. Alright, so what did we learn in this video? Number one, I'm still shaking my head, this sucks. But number one, we learned that, you know, always when an engine's sitting like this, oil pan may be filled with gunk, and this one was no different than most of the ones I've seen before, where there was just like handfuls of crud in the bottom of the oil pan. and the screen for the pickup on the oil pump was almost completely clogged. It had like a couple little windows where there was open parts of the screen, but the majority of it was clogged. So definitely, if you have a car like this that's been sitting for a long time, or an engine, before you run it for any length of period of time, or if you plan on driving it, drop the oil pan, clean all the sludge out, take the time to clean it, because it could come back and bite you. I'm sure this one definitely would have if I would have just started up and tried to drive the thing. So got that all replaced, got the oil pan up. That was great. One not good thing was what you guys found right when we were about to start the or crank the engine over. I happened to I noticed as we were working on the car that on the other side of the block, on the driver's side, there was like a little bit of water like dripping, and it was right at the oil pan where it seals. And I thought maybe when I was cleaning the oil pan off with Pre, I left a little bit of Pre like right where the seal was, and when I tightened it all up, it was like pushing it out. So I'm like, no big deal, I'll check it later. And then like I was noticing it was like clear water, and it didn't smell like Pre or solvent or anything like that, which was odd. But I kind of sort of ignored it and kept working. Didn't want to get sidetracked. Then I came to the passenger side here, and right when we were about to try and hook the jumper cables up, I happened to bump with my elbow the drain like pipe plug that goes on either side of the block. There's two of them. I happened to bump the one with my arm, and I noticed water started trickling out of it. I'm like, oh no. So I look up in the hole and look at the plug, and like I showed you guys, they had just epoxied the plugs in. They were the wrong size plugs, so they just took like JB Weld or something, shoved it up in there, and I guess it was probably holding coolant some. It was probably leaking, I would think, but either way, I guess it was holding coolant. So I took just a little flathead screwdriver and pushed it up in there, and bang, like you guys saw, water just came out everywhere. I did the driver's side then after I showed you guys. I did the driver's side, and it was the same thing. It poked up through the little bit of JB Weld or whatever it was. It had softened over the years, and I got a waterfall of water came out, a little less than the passenger side, but I got some out. That's really, really bad, and I'm kind of bummed. I'm a little worried that the block might be cracked, because it was enough water that if it was sitting in the wrong spot, froze, expanded, it could have definitely cracked something inside the block, and we could have a problem, or even in the heads or something. I'm not sure, but I really, really am hoping that I got lucky. I'm praying to the hot rod gods that that didn't happen, but I don't have high hopes. So on the good side of things, I was easily able to get the starter to crank over. Sometimes you got to hammer on them, tap on them to get the starter to work. Starter just spun right over, which was great. I had all the plugs out and everything to make it easy for the engine to spin over. So engine spun over, and we very quickly got oil pressure up into the engine. And my little gauge here, like you guys saw, got 20 pounds of pressure. So that is good. If it wasn't for finding the striking a fountain here, or a well, we would have been doing really good. I'd be like super psyched right now. But anyway, so we're just going to continue on. I won't really know if it's cracked until we really get a little further. So what I'm going to work on next time is getting the points filed, getting the coil and all that stuff wired up, or finding the wires because they're all laying out. And work on maybe getting the thing to fire, which would be cool. Even if we just pour some fuel down the carb. I don't know if the carb's, if it's all dried out, it may not work. But we're gonna try and pour some fuel down the carb, get it to fire and run, which would be really awesome. And you know what? Even if the engine's cracked, we might as well keep moving, because we don't know until we try. And I'm just working on this in between other projects, so not a big rush. So that is the update on the 34 Ford hot rod project, and we're going to try and keep going on resurrecting this thing as we bounce around some other projects. But we got it going, learned a little more about the car's history. Not excited. Anyways, thanks guys for watching. I just gotta laugh. Catch you later.